Considering a move to Boston, well, before you pack those bags, it's important to know what living in Boston truly entails. It is a wonderful city with a lot of history and culture, great job market, great dining and entertainment scene, but it has its own quirks, its own challenges that could kind of reset what your expectations might be about living here. So we're going to go through all that, but make sure you stick around to the end because I'll reveal who I think might love Boston best and how you can thrive here as well. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Mike O'Brien. I'm a Boston real estate agent and expert, guiding you through all the facets of life here in this city. So the highs, the lows, everything in between. Boston does have a lot to offer, but it's not everyone's cup of tea. So if you're contemplating a move here, there are several things you should know before making that big decision. So in this video, I'm going to go through the daily realities of life here in the city, common challenges, how to navigate them, who I think will love living in Boston, and of course, tips survive but thrive here in the city. So make sure you stick around so you can avoid the mistakes a lot of newcomers make when moving to Boston. So let's get into it. So if you're expecting life in the big city in a sprawling metropolis like Los Angeles or New York City, you might be surprised that Boston feels kind of small, unexpectedly so. It is definitely a big city, at least population-wise. It's one of the biggest cities in the United States. But in terms of the geographical space, it's really compact, just 48 square miles. And when you talk about the Boston city limits, it is not that hard and not that long to walk from one side of Boston to the other. So if you're looking for that sprawling landscape, you're not going to find that in Boston. Also, unlike other major cities, there's not really a set downtown. Businesses, entertainment, nightlife, it's all kind of dispersed throughout the city. And if you say, oh, I'm going downtown, what does that mean? There's a section called Downtown Crossing, but I'm not sure anyone would classify that as the downtown. Is downtown Back Bay, where you have all the restaurants and retail space in the Prudential Center and Newberry Street and Boylston Street? Perhaps is downtown Beacon Hill, where the City Hall and State Capitol is, or actually the State Capitol, or is a government center where City Hall is and Faneuil Hall and all the shops down there. Fenway, where you have Fenway Park, the home of the Boston Red Sox and the Museum of Fine Arts. Really, there's no set downtown. If you're saying, I'm going downtown Boston, where's that? Well, it may just be wherever you're headed at that time. Now, when it comes to housing, Boston does have a lot of charm, but sometimes that charm comes with limited space, steep prices for sure, a lack of modern amenities. So like any urban center, downtown living, it's tough to find space. And if you do want to find spacious living or a lot of square footage in your home, you're just going to be paying a premium for it. And Boston is an old city. It's one of the oldest cities in the Northeast in America. And so some of these buildings, not just built decades ago, they've been built centuries ago. Obviously haven't always been retrofitted with some of the modern amenities you might be looking for. So central AC, in-unit laundry, modern kitchen, open floor plan, whatever is that modern amenity or that box you're trying to check, it can be hard to find in housing in downtown Boston. So just be aware of that. You might be having to do a lot of renovation or updates if you want to get some of those modern amenities like AC or in-unit laundry into your home. Also, again, prices are steep. If you're on the rental side of things, it's easy to be in the $3,000 a month rate for a decent one bedroom. If you're a home buyer, it's easy to find a space that's going to be mid to high six figures. I mean, easy in that may not be available, but it's easy to find homes where the prices are at that. And of course, depending on the level of luxury you're looking for, the number of amenities, it is easy to see homes with prices well into the millions. So again, Boston housing, a lot of charm, but definitely going to be dealing with tight spaces at times, a lack of modern amenities, and of course, high prices. So while Boston does have its historic charm and overall I think is a beautiful city, like any major city, it's not always picture perfect. And for Boston, a lot of those issues come back to age and space. So Boston, one of the oldest cities in America, and the homes here can be old at times as well. They are aged or aging. And so it's not hard to find construction zones or construction on homes where the masonry or brickwork's being replaced or brownstones being updated. Also, the infrastructure, also some of the oldest in America as well. So you will be dealing with potholes, you will be dealing with streets that need to be repaved or cracked sidewalks that need to be repaired. So it's just a part of being one of the older cities in America and dealing with the buildings and infrastructure that is aging as well. On top of that, Boston is a geographically compact space. What does that mean? Well, there aren't back alleys in a lot of neighborhoods to put your trash out back. I think of areas like Beacon Hill or the North End where you just can't put your trash out back and have it unnoticeably picked up by the trash guys. No, trash once a week is going to be lining the sidewalks. It's not hard to be parked in a meter spot perhaps and opening your door and opening up into a couple of trash cans or trash bags that are out there for pickup the next morning. So again, like any major city, it's not pretty all the time. Boston, I think, prettier than most or more beautiful than most, picturesque than most, but not picture perfect all the time just because of the age and space available in Boston. So the hospitality in Boston can be a bit different. And I say this as someone who is from the Northeast, but a Boston transplant, but absolutely loves Boston. Boston's not necessarily known for its warm hospitality on a day-to-day basis. I think part of being a faster-paced environment that you associate with the Northeast, so as you go through DC, Philadelphia, New York, and Boston, it's not personal, it's just kind of the personality. And so just get used to people that are a little more straightforward, a little more to the point, maybe a little more blunt than you're used to. And if you're from an area where you're used to those big smiles, warm welcomes, and kind of the warm and fuzzies associated with that, just know it might be a little bit of culture shock and maybe a little bit of surprise. Again, great people here, but just a little more straightforward, and you're not going to be getting those warm and fuzzies on a day-to-day basis. Of course, with the faster paced environment here in the Northeast and Boston, you also get slower paced and the most inopportune times, it seems. So restaurants at times, post offices, government services. So a little bit of dichotomy there in a bit of a bad way. But again, if you're from somewhere or expecting kind of the over friendliness of a neighborhood, city, or town, just know you may not be getting that every day, each and every day here in Boston. So Boston has a public transportation system like any good city. It's called the MBTA, or as it's more affectionately known, the T. And while the transportation map, both downtown and into the suburbs, is fast, and the T does a pretty good job in general of getting you from point A to point B to point C, it can be unreliable. So you can expect delays due to weather sometimes. You can expect delays to mechanical malfunctions. You can expect delays due to construction. Sometimes you'll be on a line and you can expect to have to hop off that line and take a bus to a stop further down the line just because they're updating the tracks or the electrical or the system, what have you. So the T in recent years had its problems with delays such as that. So just make sure you're working into the equation or calculating extra time for your commute or your transportation in and out of downtown. If you're commuting during rush hour, do not expect to be getting a seat. Very crowded on the T, so pretty much standing room only during those peak times, during those rush hour times. And also those times when maybe you're making your way to Fenway Park for a Red Sox game, for example. So it can be very crowded on the T depending on the time of day and or the day itself. Finally, no late night service. So if you're planning on staying out past midnight, you're likely going to need to call a taxi, use your rideshare app, because the T does not run all night like some trains, some subways do in other cities. Cuts it off pretty early by comparison. So again, if you're making it a late night, just make sure you're prepared to call a taxi or use the rideshare app as needed. So I can't believe it's taken us this long to talk about, but we do need to talk about the weather because Boston definitely has all four seasons. And each season will keep you on your toes in its own unique way. How fun is that, right? But the summers, think hot and humid. You can easily see stretches, heat waves where the temperatures are in the 90-degree range, maybe even inching into the hundreds. So be ready for sticky commutes in the morning and at the end of the day. Remember, older buildings here in Boston, so you may not have central AC. You may be dealing with wall ACs. You may be dealing with no AC at all. So again, just be prepared for that during the summers here in Boston. On the other side of things, the winters, snowy, icy, cold. We haven't had a lot of snowfall the last couple winters here in Boston, but here in 2025, we've already had, I think, 6, 7, maybe 8 separate instances of snow, and it has been cold as well. Those temperatures have been sub-freezing here in Boston almost the entirety of the new year thus far. So be prepared for that. Make sure you have your winter coat, your winter hat, your gloves, your boots, the entire outfit for the winters here in Boston that last from December to March and sometimes even into April as well. The spring and the fall seasons, the most pleasant, the most beautiful seasons here in Boston. I think 60, 70 degrees, wonderful in the spring, cool and crisp in the fall as the leaves start to change their colors, but they can be quick. Just as quickly as those beautiful spring and fall seasons begin, it seems like you're already into summer and winter respectively. So those seasons are Chef's kiss, they are the seasons that make all the Boston weather worthwhile, but unfortunately, they haven't been lasting very long in the last couple of years. So just be prepared for everything when it comes to the weather here in Boston. One day it can be 75 degrees and sunny. The next day it could be rainy, 45 degrees and cloudy. So if you're not a fan of the fluctuating weather, Boston might be a bit of an unpleasant surprise for you. Parking can be a daily struggle, so if you plan on owning a car in Boston, just brace yourself. Because the cost for renting a spot, especially in a garage, can easily exceed $400 per month. And you may have heard horror stories of these spots and their costs when purchasing in downtown Boston. Those can easily be 5 figures, even 6 figures. And there was one story a few years ago for a prime spot in downtown Boston that sold for $500,000. So just be prepared for the cost of parking in downtown Boston for a designated spot. Street parking is seemingly available everywhere, but there never seems to be a spot available anywhere. And that has a large part to do with the hours available. So metered parking only available for certain hours. Resident parking, spots reserved for residents of certain areas from the hours of X to Y. And you will seemingly have to circle the block endlessly to find a spot. Also dealing with a lot of spots in downtown areas where it's commercial parking only during the day. And so between metered parking, resident parking, commercial parking, and other restrictions on parking, it can be very difficult to find a spot to park when you're done for the night and perhaps heading home. Also, winter parking wars. When there's snow out, when there's snow emergencies, where there's plowing and shoveling, residents hold on to those spots with a tight grip. I'm sure you've seen news spots or pictures of the shoveled out spots are being reserved with lawn chairs by the residents. They will go to far ends to make sure no one's taking their spot that they have shoveled out to reserve for their own car. So again, a lot of spots in theory in Boston can be tough to find one if you have your own car in the city. Love sports? Awesome. Not a sports fan, or maybe not necessarily a Boston sports fan? Well, then you might find a tough time avoiding all that here in Boston. Boston is obsessed with its sports teams. The Celtics, the Red Sox, the Bruins, the Patriots. So much of those teams and sports are overall just integral to the culture here in Boston. They are passionate about their teams. If you're wearing another team's jersey, if you're criticizing one of their teams, trust me, you're going to hear about it. And so much of, more than you think, of the day-to-day life is centered around the sports here. So, game days, expect traffic, expect packed tees getting to those games, especially if the teams are doing well. Packed bars, packed restaurants, loud celebrations. Parade days when they're bringing in championships here in Boston. Think Celtics last year and the Patriots in the decades before that. So if you're looking for a city that's maybe not so obsessed with sports and its teams, you might want to look elsewhere. So after going through this list, it's clear Boston may not be for everyone, but it is a fantastic city if you are perhaps pursuing a career in tech, finance, or biotech, if you're seeking top-tier education or healthcare, or maybe pursuing a career in those fields, if you can appreciate a walkable city that has historic charm that nicely blends the old and the new. If you enjoy sports teams, parks, outdoor activities in an urban setting, if any of that resonates with you, then Boston might just be your dream city. So given everything we talked about, would you still consider moving to Boston, or any of those factors deal breakers? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you're thinking about relocating, reach out to me on Instagram at Mike O'Brien Homes, or you can email me directly at mikeobrienhomes@gmail.com. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, or hit the notification bell so you never miss an update on Boston real estate. And if you want some essential tips and things to know for moving to Boston, make sure you watch that video right here. So I appreciate you watching this one, and we'll see you next time.